Hello, everyone. We welcome you to the GTRI Splunk Security Bootcamp. My name is Chris Greenwood, and on behalf of GTRI and Representative Taylor Williams, we're excited to be able to offer you this hands-on opportunity with Splunk and Splunk ES for ES. We hope this will help provide valuable insight into your network security and more. This bootcamp doesn't necessarily require a basic understanding of search and reporting. However, it is nice to have. If you have any issues or you feel overwhelmed, don't sweat it. We're happy to help where needed and to get you back on track. As mentioned, Taylor is your presenter today. He is a Splunk architect and sales engineer here at GTRI, has been with us for over 3 years. Taylor has a vast Splunk security background, including enterprise security implementations. As your host, I'll be more than happy to field any questions you might have in the WebEx chat window. If for whatever reason I'm unable to answer your question or you want to chat further, we'll set some time aside following the bootcamp or during one of the lab sessions. So again, welcome to your GTRI Splunk for Security Bootcamp. I now turn the presentation over to Taylor.
Thank you, Chris. Much appreciated. Just one last mic check. Can you hear me okay here?
I can hear you great.
Oh, beautiful. Good start. Good start. Well, thank you for that introduction, Chris, and thank you, everyone, for joining in today. Like you said, hopefully we can get you some information here today that'll show you how we can use Splunk for security. You'll see right there at the bottom, I have my email address right there. So at any time, even during this bootcamp or afterwards, you can absolutely feel free to ask me questions, reach out to me directly if you have any more questions or need some more information. But nonetheless, I'm going to be presenting this for you guys today, and again, hopefully you can grab some valuable information as to why we use Splunk for security. I'm just going to go ahead and dig right into this guy here. A little bit of WebEx housekeeping to start everything off. Hopefully when you joined in, you were presented with a file transfer window. That should include both the presentation today, your labs, and the lab answers, as well as your user logins for the labs. I think Chris mentioned that we are using a different server today than normal. If there have been other people that have logged into our other boot camps, we usually use bootcamp.gtritraining.com. Today it is bootcamp2.gtritraining.com. The reason for that is the normal server is undergoing some Splunk maintenance, and we need to be using this other server. It's just a different image, but nonetheless, make sure you use today bootcamp2.gtritraining.com when we're doing the labs, and Chris actually put the link down there in the chat window, I see. And like he said, if there's questions during the lab today, go ahead and put them in the chat box and make sure they're directed to all the panelists, and we'll make sure we get them answered during the lecture today or during the labs. If it's a good enough question for the group, I'll go ahead and answer for the group if it's something I feel that we can all benefit from. Nonetheless, it's a little bit of WebEx keeping there. If you weren't presented with the file transfer window, you'll see right there you can just go up to File and then Transfer, and then it should bring those up for you. If anyone has issues, let us know, and we can obviously send them to you directly through an email, whatever it might be. But if you have issues, let us know and we can take care of that. So I'm going to get over the marketing part of this real quickly. It's a little something we do at the beginning of everything before we dive into the technical, but here's just a little bit of introduction into who GTRI is. We are a unique federal partner in that we actually hold several federal contracts to sell into the government, including SUP 5. Let's see, we got NetSense 2, quite a few different federal contracts that we can sell off of. Like it says there, we're a highly successful small business, and we are an 8A graduate. That was back in 2010. We are averaging over 10 years of hands-on experience in multiple industries, including Splunk and data center, collaboration, network engineering, security in general. But our consulting architects and professional services engineers average over 10 years of hands-on experience. We are an ISO shop. We are 9001-2008 quality management certified, like you can see right there, and hold many proven processes designed to mitigate risk. Now, we are a solutions integrator. We do, like I said, more than just Splunk, but we are a value-added reseller and solutions integrator. Let's see. So this is just a little bit of an introduction again into what we can do. Everything from big data around the circle there to cloud, security, wireless, unified communications, and network. These are our six major practices that we focus in. We are not solely dedicated to these six. Well, we are pretty dedicated as they are our top, but we can provide very, very valuable professional services in these six practices. You can see the vast array of certifications we hold with many different vendors, including Splunk right there. We are a Splunk Elite partner. We're actually the first Splunk Elite partner in North America, and we are the only certified training center west of the Mississippi. And what does that mean? We can actually give you and your employees actual Splunk certified education. We are accredited to give the courses that actually get you up to the architect level. And this is just kind of overgoing what I just said right there. Like I said, we're the first elite partner in North America, one of two certified training centers. We are the only one west of the Mississippi. Doesn't mean that you have to be west of the Mississippi to go through us. We can provide virtual boot camp, or not boot camps. We can provide the certification over virtual or in person, whatever it is to you guys. We do provide end-to-end support on Splunk from a pre-sales notion all the way through post-sales professional services implementation, training, and optimization. I have had the severe pleasure of doing absolutely everything you see on that. Like Chris said, I am a sales engineer here, but that also means because I am a Splunk architect that I get involved in quite a few of our professional services implementations. And like he said, I have actually done enterprise security installations for very large Fortune 300 customers. So GTRI, like it says right there, holds over 60 Splunk certifications as a company. That includes everything from the sales reps up through the architects. You'll see right there, right now we are employing 6 certified architects, all capable of performing professional services implementations. The 6 certified solutions engineers, I do believe that is a higher number now. The last time I gave this presentation, it was 6. I want to say it's 8 right now. But that is the Sales Engineer 1 and 2 certification. And like it says right there, like I've said many times before, we are a certified training center. So we are an elite reseller. This is just overgoing a couple of things that I just said about us and Splunk, but the big thing to take away from us from this here is we are not Splunk. I mean, it's a pretty obvious thing, but we should stress that GTRI is not Splunk. Splunk is not GTRI. We are partners. We are an elite partner of Splunk. We can provide all the services that Splunk can, and we resell Splunk and the maintenance and applications, enterprise applications through Splunk. So like it says, many of the slides today were produced by Splunk with the help of GTRI. It says, and are used by GTRI, but they were developed in conjunction with Splunk and GTRI, and we are using them with permission by Splunk. So like Chris said, a little bit of baseline into what Splunk is, how the architecture works, a little bit of the searching language will help in a pretty good way today. Don't worry if you don't have that background, if this is your first introduction into Splunk, into the search language, it's not the end of the world, but a little bit of baseline will help come a long way in not only what we're going to talk about today in the lecture, but also in the labs. You'll notice that another thing that was put in the transfer window is the answers to the labs. So again, if you don't have a lot of the searching experience, do not fret. Everything is answered in there for you. So don't stress too bad at all. One more thing I should note, I haven't yet, the user template or the user logins that you see that you can download. If your name is not on there, reach out to myself or Chris directly through the chat window and we'll go ahead and get you a login. We're actually set up for 75 logins on this server. So if you don't see your name there, don't worry, we'll just assign you the next one. It's pretty simple. So here's what we're hoping to accomplish today. The big one is answer the question, why use Splunk for security? There's a bunch of different SIEMs out there right now. Most people see Splunk as an operational intelligence tool or even just an event logging tool. They don't necessarily see that we can use Splunk as a security incident and event management system itself. So we want to demonstrate how to use Splunk for security use cases, including core Splunk. How can we use core Splunk, what you buy just straight core Splunk, how can we use that for security? And we want to demonstrate the Splunk app for enterprise security that actually turns Splunk into a SIEM solution just by installing an app on top. And then finally, we're obviously going to gain hands-on experience using Splunk for security. There are 3 labs today. Each of them are going to go about 15 to 20 minutes for you guys. We will keep the server up today until about 10 p.m. Mountain Time. So if you need to jump ship early here today or don't finish the labs in the 2 hours that we have dedicated for this, don't worry at all. You absolutely have time after the labs when you have time available to finish anything up. And that actually includes just playing around with it beyond what we have for the labs if you need to. You can't hurt the server. You're just a basic user in Splunk. All you can really do is search and use the app, so feel free to go nuts if you need to. When we shut down the server, we wipe the disk, so no fret at all if you want to play around with it beyond what we have in the labs. Moving right along here. And we finally get into the agenda. We're going to get into the technical here pretty soon here. Don't worry, folks. I know it's been boring so far. So the agenda, we're going to go over the state of security, where security in IT lives today. We're going to go over core Splunk for security, how we can just use Splunk out of the box for just basic security use cases, even through into advanced security use cases. And then we're going to give you, like I said, introduction to the Splunk app for enterprise security, which is a very powerful SIM app that goes right on top of core Splunk. And then, like I said, 3 hands-on labs that go with all of this. All right. When we're accessing the labs, I apologize, this is not the correct link in this presentation, but you do have the right link both in the chat as well as in your lab guide. It is https://bootcamp2.gtri-training.com, not bootcamp, bootcamp2. If you go to bootcamp, it will take you to a maintenance server, or a server under maintenance, I should say. But nonetheless, make sure you have the HTTPS and Bootcamp 2. Like Chris said, you will have to accept our cert to get into it. No big deal. Any browser, we've tested it on all browsers. It works just fine, but you will have to accept that cert no matter what browser you're using. All right. Well, let's just dig right in. So, as we know, in general, the number of threats and security is increasing and becoming quite more advanced. Today's advanced threats, they're stealthy and sophisticated and evade detection from traditional point security products that look for specific threat signatures. Above are the 3 types of advanced threats that we really like to talk about. They're good at stealing confidential data, whether it be credit cards or IP, or many of the victims unfortunately end up in the headlines. You see it from down to the tiny corporate level, through the big corporate level, to the countries themselves, to actual nation states themselves. But I'm sure, as everyone knows here, we can pretty much bottle up everything in security threats under these 3 types of advanced persistent threats. You'll hear me use the term APTs throughout this. That is advanced persistent threats, but I tend to get lazy when I talk, so when you hear me say APT, that means advanced persistent threat. All right. So, the way we like to look at security is it's prudent to approach it as if you're already compromised. That Richard Baitlick right there, that book, is actually a fantastic way to give you an introduction into security and how you should look at it. But when we talk to our customers about implementing a SIM and Splunk specifically, we like to approach it as if the systems are already compromised. It is obviously desirable to prevent attacks and have strong passwords, but it only takes one failure to compromise a system as a whole. The actual breach may leverage social engineering, leaving no hacking trail, and system usage and detection. It's a critical tool. Prevention alone is not sufficient. So we need to look at it as if things are already compromised. We need to look in a holistic view of the entire data center as a whole to be able to get valuable insight into your security posture. Apologies, missing that arrow there. There we go. Advanced persistent threats, they're hard to detect because they're not signature-based, and they hide behind legitimate credentialed activity to evade detection from traditional point security products. Every year, companies like Mandiant produce reports that describe the trends identified based on breach investigation work that they do as part of their consulting practices. There are a couple metrics that I found interesting when reading their reports, and they're actually up here. So 100%, that number is tied to the valid credentials that have been used to break in. So 100% is often via stealing password hashes or using keyloggers. They often steal admin level credentials so they can access many other systems that were not, or that are, sorry, access many other systems and not be detected. That's what I'm trying to say. The 40 there, that implies that even if you see malware in one place, you need to look much further as there are likely multiple infected machines and backdoors. The 229 days there, that shows how they can evade detection for months at a time. That's the median number of days that people have access to your internal systems while evading detection. They move slow and low and do not set off alarms from point signature-based security products like anti-malware solutions. And then finally, that 67 there, that 67% of victims were notified by an external entity. Notification usually starts with customer complaints like bank account drained or credit card maxed out. Often the FBI actually informs them. Business loses control of the response if informed by an outside agency. All right. So how do we get around this? How do we bring everything down? All, like it says right up there, all data is security relevant, big data. The key part of IT security is protecting your confidential data, which means detecting advanced threats like cyber criminals or malicious insiders before they can steal your data. To detect or investigate them, you need non-security and security data because advanced threats avoid detection from signature-based security products. So as you can see there in that bubble, these are what a traditional SIEM looks at, just firewall authentication, anti-malware, data loss prevention tools. So not to be holistically viewing your entire infrastructure and to be actually up and to date with your security posture, what you're looking at here in the traditional SIEM isn't necessarily enough. Most traditional SIEMs just focus on gathering the signature-based threats which do not have the fingerprints of advanced threats. So above is the above scenario here. This scenario is if there is no SIEM. Instead, point UIs and grep are used, and aggregate data is very manual and it's very time-consuming. So we need to get a holistic view. We need to add everything. We need to add more data to the view to get a nice holistic approach as to what is our security posture in general. And this is where something like Splunk comes in. It gives you the ability to look holistically across your entire infrastructure and gain valuable security data from devices that you might not think are breached. So you can see when somebody that is going low and slow through your network is actually in there without being notified by an external entity. And I think that is actually going to drive us over to our first lab, and I am right, it sure is. So this is your first lab. Follow the lab guide there. It's going to give you a link to our server. Again, you were given a link to the server, the lab doc, as well as your credentials to get into the lab. Go ahead and make sure you can log on, and the lab will have steps for you to go ahead and build your first security dashboard that's going to be built on in the next subsequent labs. But nonetheless, go ahead, let's get, like it says, get our boots dirty. Let's go ahead and get into the lab and start working away. Again, if you have questions, if you have questions during the lab or you cannot log in for any reason, you should go ahead and, send a message to Chris or I in the chat window and we'll go ahead and get you set up. But I'm going to go ahead and give you about 15 minutes here to do this one, and we will resume at 35 after the hour. Thanks, everyone. All right, folks, going to go ahead and keep moving right along here. Hopefully you were able to get through that lab successfully. I saw quite a bit of search activity going on, so it's good to know that we have people playing along with it. But looks like the search activity has kind of died down, which I'm going to take as we have gone through the lab. Been able to have enough time to go through the steps and everything that we need to do to finish that first lab. Again, just to reiterate, we will be keeping the server up until probably, it'll be 10 p.m. Mountain Time, midnight Eastern Time tonight, just so that people can finish up labs or play around with it yet again, like we were saying earlier, outside of this boot camp. We only have 2 hours allotted to this boot camp, and I know extenuating circumstances pop up that maybe make it so you need to jump ship early, or you just cannot finish the labs in the dedicated time that we have here. Not to fret, we will keep that server up and running until 10 p.m. Mountain Time tonight. But without further ado, I'm going to keep going through the lecture here. And I'm going to dive right into that second use case we had up on the agenda of why do we use Splunk for security. So Splunk is a full intelligence platform, not just a security intelligence platform, and can meet the needs and use cases plus more of basically any business. Splunk is more than just a SIEM. Actually, that's just one build on of what Splunk really is. But it's more than a SIEM in that it is much more flexible and can also be used for use cases outside of security. Those 5 use cases you see right there are what we consider the top 5 Splunk security use cases. Many customers already have a SIEM in place and are generally happy with it, but they do have some pain with the current SIEM. Maybe it struggles getting in non-security data. Maybe it has limited search and reporting capabilities, you know, this and that. The nice thing about the getting non-security data in portion of that is with Splunk, that is, you know, that's actually, for lack of a better term, a pretty easy task. It is completely analogous from what it can bring in. Any type of machine data can be brought into Splunk and analyzed. So to become your whole holistic platform, Splunk, with its ability to gather logs from any type of data source, that's the power behind Splunk, really. In each case, Splunk can happily complement a SIEM. It doesn't need to necessarily replace an existing SIEM. Perhaps you're using a SIEM for alerting and they can log into Splunk to do the investigations, whatever you might need to. The key point here is that we can easily complement or replace a SIEM. Splunk, for many of my customers, has actually been the logging tool where we use it for gathering the aggregate log data from many different disparate data sources, and we just tie that into an existing SIEM that runs the reporting and the alerting on top of that. Not to say Splunk can't do that. That's obviously one of the major benefits of Splunk, but they already have existing SIEMs that, you know, they provide the alerting that the company needs them to do, but they're not able to gather the data from all these disparate data sources. That is, again, the power behind Splunk. The Splunk strategy, like I said here, is to complement, not necessarily to replace. Obviously, there are times when we do a full replacement if someone's just really not happy with their SIEM, but again, the strategy is to complement and not necessarily replace. Move right along here into using core Splunk for security. So like it says up top there, armed with a few Splunk search commands and a lot of machine data, Splunk Enterprise is a powerful tool. Many of you are probably familiar with this, the searching functionality of Splunk already. It used to be called Google for the data center. They've since changed the mantra just a little bit. But it's pretty simple to actually perform pretty robust searches themselves. In the next few seconds here, or a few minutes here, I'm going to give you a demo on just a few searches that you can use that can enable a SOC in general. So many advanced Splunk security users just rely on core Splunk's ability to search, alert, report, and dashboard. Just they use that as their security workbench. They don't necessarily need the Splunk app for enterprise security to perform what they need to do, although it is an incredibly powerful build onto Splunk and thousands of man hours have gone into the development of that. It is reliant on the functions of core Splunk itself. So if you get what you need out of core Splunk to perform your security posture, then absolutely use that. The point to take away there is, yeah, I mean, enterprise security is a fantastic and amazing app, but not always necessary. It is built onto the base functions of core Splunk. And as you see there, the main core Splunk features that we use for your security workbench are searching, correlations, alerts, reports, and visualizations, which I'm hoping and sure quite a few of you are very familiar with. All right, I'm just going to go into one of the knowledge objects that Splunk goes into here, or that Splunk has here, just to kind of save the time. But the biggest function that we see that actually enables a SOC out of Splunk is its alerting functionality. Hopefully a few of you are pretty familiar with what an alert is in Splunk. Basically, once you find an issue, we can be proactive and create an alert. So when you create a search that you find is pulling up some sort of event type that you want to be known about or make known about every time it pops up, Splunk gives you this option to create an alert. So when you create that search, you save that search as an alert, and you can give it many different options for how you want it to alert you. You can have it email you when the alert happens. You can run a script and point Splunk to a script that you've created that will be executed anytime the alert is triggered, or you can just list them in the triggered events if you want to see some analytics on how many times that alert is triggered if it's not necessarily a totally, how do I want to put this? If it's not a very prudent alert to you and it doesn't need to be proactively monitored on, that's one good way you can use it. Like it says right there, you can actually run a script to execute this into an existing ticketing system. The point is Splunk is capable of executing that script that you have written. Splunk does not have those scripts created in core Splunk itself. There are some apps out there that do have scripts that are written that get executed when an alert is triggered. The biggest one that comes to my mind is the Palo Alto app, but nonetheless, core Splunk itself has the capability to call the script that you have written when an alert is triggered. You can run alerts on a scheduled, predefined schedule. You can have it say run this search every day. You can have it run every minute. You can run it on a cron schedule, or you can run alerts in real time. That would be for the heavy hitting, most critical alerts. You need to know the second they pop up so that you can be proactive about them. One big caveat to that is every real-time search you are running in Splunk will use a full core of your dedicated server. So obviously, if you have an 8-core server, you can only run 8 real-time searches at once. Everything else after that will be queued permanently until those real-time searches are shut off. That's why they have, both us and Splunk have recommendations as to how big we recommend your servers be that are actually performing both the core Splunk searches as well as the enterprise security searches. And they usually scare people a little bit, but we usually tell people between 16 and 24 cores because we know how many alerts people need to be made aware of. All right. Sorry about that. Phone started ringing. So let's recall real quick here that Splunk does not need to know much about the structure of machine data to ingest it. If it is machine data, Splunk can ingest it and it can spit it out to you and it can be searched and reported on. That's fantastic. But let's say you want to run, say, an alert on one type of firewall that might not trigger on another because you have defined your fields in a different format. Well, this brings up the need to normalize the data across a common denominator, and Splunk has developed that in what they call the common information model. To correlate the events across multiple sources, like it says there, we do need to normalize. What the common information model does, or KIM as we call it, is it normalizes the data across a least common denominator set of fields. So we have the example there where, say, vendor A calls the IP address SRC, while vendor B calls the same field SRC_IP. Well, obviously, if you go and run a search on just SRC fields, you're going to completely miss all of the data that you get across vendor B. So to get around that, we like to implement the notion of this common information model that, say, normalizes SRC and SRC_IP under a common denominator, which just happens to be SRC_IP. But if we normalize that field across the enterprise, not just, say, from vendor A and vendor B, but from vendor A, vendor B, as well as C, D, whatever you want to call it, through the stack of devices that they have, then we're able to get a completely holistic view across the enterprise. Whereas if we don't implement our Splunk deployment in a notion that takes this common information model to, common information model for granted here, then we're going to miss a lot of data. So I'm just going to actually read this out loud to you guys. The Splunk I cannot speak today. The Splunk common information model is a set of field names and tags for event data, which are used to define the least common denominator of a domain of interest. These tags and fields provide a standard method of parsing, categorizing, and normalizing the data. And the biggest thing, again, that I see out of this is this gives you the ability to search across your entire enterprise and receive events and results across your enterprise without the need to, say, add different fields to your search or make your searches more robust. This gives you a way of looking into your data center as a whole. When I say we, I mean GTRI and Splunk, go to do a professional services engagement where we start Splunk net new from scratch, we highly stress the common information model. Every data source that we onboard, we make sure that the fields that are being extracted are common information model compliant. Whether people are using Splunk for security or not, the common information model, once again, gives you that full holistic view into what is going on in your data center. If you're using it for operational awareness or whatnot, it's still important there. So especially in net new Splunk deployments, it is very critical to keep this common information model at the top of your mind. Like I said, we deploy and onboard data sources to the common information model, make them compliant with the common information model every time we onboard a new data source. It may require a little bit of time to do some field mapping, but it is worth it in the end. Now, there is an extra part of this in that quite a few of the apps that you can download from Splunk, including technical add-ons, they are already common information model compliant. I'm going to use the example of anything that has the Cisco brand on it. Cisco's TAs, which is a technical add-on, and apps are common information model compliant from the Splunk app base. And how can you tell that? When you go to apps.splunk.com and you go ahead and download an app, it will say over on the right side of your screen what version of Splunk it is compatible with, and if it is compliant with the common information model, what version of the common information model it is compliant with. So what those kinds of TAs and apps do is when you onboard that type of data, it actually applies common information model compliant fields, tags, all the knowledge objects to those events without really any work on your end needing to be done. The biggest thing that needs to be done on your end is when you bring in that data, the specific source type needs to be defined per that data. And the technical add-ons and apps apply the common information model to that source type. So very powerful. A lot of vendors, including Splunk, Cisco, Palo Alto, you name it, they are pushing towards the common information model as it applies to Splunk to ensure that they are basically enabling the SIM function of both core Splunk as well as the enterprise security application. Now that brings up the next point. The enterprise security application relies 100% on the common information model. It cannot perform the functions that are so powerful to its core without common information model compliant fields across the board. It will run the searches on those that are common information model, but obviously it will miss those that are not. A lot of the correlation and notable searches, which you will see later in this presentation, they are, actually not a lot, all of them run searches based off of those common information model fields. All right, enough yammering there. Excuse me, as you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about that one. If you do go into your deployment with this in mind, it will save you dozens, if not hundreds of hours in the back end of making sure that your Splunk SIM solution works properly. So here's just a little bit of a closer look as to what it looks like. This is actually all documented on Splunk.com. It's actually under apps.splunk.com. I'm going to go ahead, oh, it has it right there at the bottom of this presentation, which if you need to look at this, I do have the presentation available for download through the transfer window. Just go ahead and copy and paste that. So what that link gives you is every common information model compliant field and what it relates to. Now, Splunk has done a pretty damn good job at keeping the KIM up to speed with all the vendors that are out there today and what their logs look like. And that's why I'm saying when you go to look at an app and you see what version of the common information model it is compliant with, it's good to make sure that you're up to date with it because, you know, maybe you've implemented some new hardware out there that is logging its systems in a different way. Nonetheless, they update it pretty frequently. But that link right there gives you the ability to read into absolutely all of the field names that are out there in the Common Information Model and what they apply to. GTRI and Splunk use this doc and this reference guide very thoroughly when we're going to implement new data sources and when we need to do field mapping if there isn't already an app or technical add-on out there to help us along the way. So this is going to take me into a little bit of a demo here. I'm basically just going to show you guys what we can do in Core Splunk just with, I think I have 4 or 5 searches up there right now, into what Core Splunk with some actually relatively simple searches can actually give us. So I'm going to go ahead and actually share out my screen here, and we'll go through a few searches here. All right. And Chris, I'm going to ask you to chime in and make sure that you can see my screen here or not. Bueller.
I can.
Bueller.
I can.
Bueller. Great, thanks, bud. So this first one, obviously not very robust, but part of the data gens that we have coming in and a couple of the apps that we have on top of everything, including enterprise security, have given us out of the box a variety of different tags as well as that severity ID field. Now, what tags do, as I'm sure quite a few of you are familiar with, is it groups a bunch of different event types together under one tag. So if certain fields exist in an event at a certain level, they hit this tag. And under this tag, we're calling this vulnerability, not necessarily a critical threat or anything like that, just if this type of device is considered vulnerable, based off of the fields that are in there, it hits that tag that we call vulnerability. Severity ID is it's actually another tag itself, but it adds a little bit more complexity into this. So we're seeing right now the raw events that hit the tag vulnerability and severity ID of 5. So 5 is obviously the highest that we can go as far as this field is concerned, but this brings us the raw events. Now, like I said, these tags right here that you see in the search, they were given to us out of the box by a couple of different apps, including enterprise security. We didn't need to do anything. Nonetheless, there's your raw events. So let's go ahead and add a little bit more to the search. And like I said, I put in the searches beforehand just so that they would run. But I wanted to just go ahead and table, the destination IPs. Where's the traffic going from these vulnerable assets? We want to see maybe the IP addresses that, the most traffic they're going to. So right here you see we have a table, and this is something we can add into our own dashboard. We can add it into a dashboard that gets loaded every time we open up that dashboard. Let's make it even a little bit more robust. Let's add a nested search into this thing. Let's go ahead and add the tag of attack. I'm hoping a few of you have seen the nested search capability of Splunk. So what we're doing is we're searching first for what we had beforehand, and then we're let's go ahead and run this again. And then we're adding the attack tag as well. It's a different type of tag as opposed to vulnerability, but we're adding this on top of the vulnerability. So we're going to go ahead and say the hosts that were vulnerable with a very high severity ID, I want to see the events when they were attacked. So here you go. Here are the raw events for those. And then like we did last time, we could add a table to it. I didn't do that here, but just to show you that this isn't a very complicated search. And this is showing pretty good data. These are the attacks on those vulnerable hosts. Those are just the raw events themselves. And that is, like I said, just given from the apps that we have built onto Core Splunk. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and move to the next one. I have WebEx up here, I can't search. But nonetheless, so I'm going to go into a completely different notion here and talk about the event types. Now this comes straight from enterprise security. And an event type is, I got to reload this again, excuse me. An event type is a collection of different events themselves that kind of fall under a category. And what enterprise security does is it calls this category an IDS attack. Now this IDS attack just happens to be this. This happens to be the event type that builds into that IDS attack. So what event types really do is they they simplify your searches. That's how I like to think of it. That's not truly what they do, but that's how I like to think of it. So all of this IDS attack was that last search that you see there. So what I'm trying to do is now narrow this down to the raw events where the attacks were happening from a country that is not the United States. Not necessarily what you want to do, but just to point out here that now we can actually use core Splunk and its base functions here. IP location is a very powerful function where you can actually narrow down events to locations themselves. So I'm using this event type and this IP location function to narrow down the attacks where the attack came from a location outside the continental United States. And these are the raw events there. We could plot that on a map. It gets a little bit robust after that. I'm going to show you how you can do that on the next one. The reason I didn't do it here on this one right here is because I just did not have the time before we were running before this, before the boot camp here. But I'll show you next where you can actually apply things to a map itself. The point here is now we're narrowing it down to a location. Here are the raw events of attacks where the source came from outside the United States. I could go ahead and get rid of this, and now we have all of the attacks. And it adds in this source country field for us when we do the IP location source. So these are the countries that are being created by our data generators. That actually is a good side point here. All the data that you're seeing today in the lab was created in conjunction with Splunk and GTRI in the form of executable scripts, in that our data generators themselves are creating fake data. These are the formats of logs from, say, ESA, or from ASA, Cisco appliances, from Blue Coats and whatnot, but this isn't real data. This is all coming from a script that is creating generated data. Nonetheless, a little sidebar there, but just in case you're wondering. I'm going to move on to the next example where we actually map everything. So I still use that IP location, one of my functions. Geez, apologies, folks, I can't speak today. Too much coffee, we'll just call it that. And then we actually plot this to a map. So right here, I'm just looking for the very basic search of, I'm looking for failures where we were also seeing the word password. So this is the source locations of where we're seeing lots of failed passwords. I'm seeing quite a bit from the UK, obviously, up there. Count quite a bit. Again, keep in mind, this is data gens themselves. They aren't necessarily reflective of a true security posture, but nonetheless, if you see something like this where we have failed passwords in the tens of thousands from a certain location themselves, you might want to drill down in and see what's going on. Someone's probably hitting there trying to brute force attack into your network. Nonetheless, this gives you another means of just running, your location dashboard to see where people are trying to maybe necessarily break into your systems. And as you can see, once again, not a very robust search. There's a lot going on in here, and it's very powerful, but this is baked into core Splunk, guys. Everything that I've done up here are core Splunk searches, and they've been very powerful searches. Point there is, this is how we can potentially use core Splunk to enable our security workbench. We don't necessarily need enterprise security application. You will see in the next demo that I do, which will be after your next lab, at how powerful it truly is. But the point is, we can get very valuable data out of core Splunk itself, armed with just a little bit of search language itself. It helps to have a bit of search language, but again, this is not that complicated of a search. I mean, I'm not narrowing down a lot. I'm just narrowing down failed passwords and then applying a couple of functions to it. These aren't very robust. There's no statistics going into this, no advanced linear regression. Jeez, too much coffee. Nonetheless, core Splunk is a very powerful tool and can absolutely meet your needs of your security posture with a bit of time in creating the searches that are pertinent to your company or to your environment. So, I do believe it's time for lab 2. So, I think I'm going to be giving you guys Let's give you 15 minutes here, and I'll see if there's still some search activity going on. If there is, then I'll give a little bit more time. But let's do 15 minutes for this second lab here. What you're going to be doing is just simply adding to your existing dashboard. It's going to be going through a few different examples like I just showed you there, of where we can use core Splunk itself for the security tool and add to your dashboard. That would ultimately, a dashboard's a good tool to use for, a security operations center to look up at and be running their real-time searches or be running, say, look at the map. Nonetheless, let's go ahead and dive right into this lab. As always, ask questions if you guys have them. But without further ado, get going into it, and let's go ahead and call it 15 after the hour. I will come back and we'll keep chatting as long as things are looking okay. Again, if I see some more activity going on, I will go ahead and give us 5 more minutes or so, but let's plan on coming back a quarter after the hour. Again, ask questions if you have them. Thanks for listening to me yammer for a half an hour there, but nonetheless, have fun with this one. All right, everyone, I am going to keep going here with the lecture. We got about a quarter after the hour here. Hoping to get through this next part of the lecture and demo within, let's call it the next half hour to give you another 15 to 20 minutes to run the last lab while we have the 2-hour time frame. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of dive right in. We're going to start talking about, SIMs in general, as well as using the Enterprise Security app. I'm going to give you a pretty good demo of that. So security event, information and event management defined. I'm going to read this out loud just because I think it's a pretty good definition. SIM technology supports threat detection and security incident response through real-time collection and historical analysis of security events from a wide variety of event and contextual data sources. It also supports compliance reporting and incident investigation through analysis of historical data from these sources. Core capabilities of SIM technology are a broad scope of event collection and the ability to correlate and analyze events across disparate data sources. Now, traditional SIMs, they suffer from collectors or back-end databases that require data reduction or normalization and hamper security use cases. There's little support for custom data sources. Various different SIMs that exist today are very siloed in what they can actually bring in. You might recall that slide from a while ago where we showed what of the traditional SIMs can bring in, and we need to get that broad, holistic view across the enterprise to actually, implement a successful SIM. Traditional SIMs also might suffer from brittle collectors that break when data format changes. Splunk's schema on the fly that notion actually allows you to bring in any type of data as well as any format of data. So as data changes over time, data formats change, Splunk is not hindered at all. All right, so this kind of digs in a little bit more into the limitations of the existing SIMs. So as you can see, existing SIMs, they limit the view of security threats. It's difficult to collect data sources and they can require costly or custom collectors for databases schemas. Splunk doesn't require this. The base Splunk enterprise software can collect data from any type of data source that generates machine data. Traditional SIMs might also have inflexible searching and reporting that hampers your investigations and threat detections. I'm thinking specifically of HP ArcSight. I have had nothing but nightmares with that searching functionality. It's a good log collector, but as far as the searching goes, not exactly what we're looking for. Splunk's notion, I don't want to say this, if the data is in Splunk, it can be searched upon. Splunk's searching capabilities are one of the most powerful parts of Splunk itself. So another limitation is the scale to speed issues impede ability to do big data analytics. Splunk scales linearly and simply. You just add a bit more horsepower to it and you can bring more data in. It is not hampered by the amount of data or the size of data or just the raw aggregate volume of data that is brought into your enterprise deployment. You can run searches across your enterprise no matter how much data without any hindrance. You're limited only by the horsepower of your servers. And a final one is it's difficult to deploy and manage, and it often requires multiple products with existing SIMs. Splunk in general really only takes a week or two to implement the baseline size of everything, especially even with enterprise security. We call it takes about 2 weeks to implement an enterprise deployment of Splunk. Get core Splunk up and running, and then get enterprise security up and running. Depending on the size and complexity, of course, it can really take just about 2 weeks to go from test and dev into production. So, Splunk, like I've said many times now, can ingest any type of machine data from any source in real time. These are listed here on the left. We have lots of different events there, different sources, and they're flowing into Splunk for the indexing. Once indexed, users can perform the use cases on the top right, above that Splunk icon there. So we have ad hoc searching, monitoring, alerting, blah, blah, you can read. But they can search through the data, monitor the data, and be alerted in real time if scheduled search parameters are met. Raw data can be aggregated in seconds for custom reports and dashboards. Also, Splunk is a platform that developers can build on. It uses well-documented REST API and several SDKs so developers and external applications can directly access and act on the data within Splunk. This goes into a little bit more of what I'm talking about, where we can complement solutions and not just replace them. Splunk can be the data collector while something else does the searching using the REST API interface, or vice versa. Splunk can be the search and reporting and alerting function tier of your SIM while something else is running the collector. We utilize that REST API a lot when we're talking about development and complementation of existing SIMs. And lastly, besides indexing raw data into its flat file data store, Splunk can also retrieve and index data that resides in other data sources such as SQL databases or even Hadoop. There are built-in database collectors that Splunk has, and also apps that can actually run database collections from any type of database that you might be thinking of, Oracle, MySQL, and if you're thinking of it, it has the connectors to grab the data from those databases and monitor the disk of the database. This is just a quick look at where Splunk has been moving as far as it sits in the Gartner SIM Magic Quadrant. It has been rapidly increasing into the upper echelons of it, and for the last 3 years has actually been in that magic upper right-hand quadrant. You'll see we have that yellow arrow there. That's because I have just been informed today that it has moved into the 2015 Magic Quadrant for the 4th year running. And as you can see, it moved a little bit more right and a little bit more up. That's the way we want to move. Right now, it is sitting right below IBM QRadar, IBM SIM solution. But nonetheless, this is just to show you that Splunk as a SIM, specifically with enterprise security, is considered in the top tier of SIM solutions out there today. Just a few industry accolades here. I'm not going to go into all of these here, but the point is Splunk beat out HP ArcSight. They beat out IBM QRadar for these accolades. They beat out Logarithm, NetIQ, SolarWinds. They beat them for these industry accolades just in their SIM solution. So when you think of Splunk as just an operational intelligence or a event collector, not necessarily true, obviously. We can use it as a very powerful SIM. Couple of key differentiators here. Not going to read every one of them, just kind of the prudent ones here. The time to deployment matched with the schema on the fly makes Splunk a very quick, fast time to value product. It is software only. It does not require back-end databases or individual collectors to operate. You can operate Splunk Enterprise with enterprise security on a single piece of hardware. You do not need third-party collectors or hardware outside of what is built into Splunk. Splunk Enterprise itself can ingest any type of machine data. I've said that 1,000 times now. The big data architecture enables scale and speed. It is not hindered by the amount or size of data that you actually have in your environment. And then I'm just again, the open platform for APIs, SDKs, and apps. They broaden what just Splunk Enterprise can do. It is an open platform to basically, make it your own. You can build your own apps. You can implement apps on top of core Splunk, but again, It's open source, not open source, it's open SDKs and REST API interface make it so that you can basically do whatever you really are thinking about doing with Splunk and data collection. It can be done with Splunk. Anyway, again, not going to read through every one of these. We could waste a lot of time doing that, but I think that is actually going to bring me in to the enterprise security demo. You guys are going to have your last lab after this is going to give you hands-on with the enterprise security app. And what I'm going to do here for, let's say, the next 15 minutes or so is give you an introduction into the app itself. I must stress, this is just an introduction into what this can do. Both us and Splunk offer a 10-hour, 2-day course into just the usability of the enterprise security application. So what I'm going to do is just show you guys a quick demo of what we can get out of enterprise security just using our data gens. So what I'm going to do, share out my screen once again. If I can ever get there, we'll go through a little bit of the demo here. So this is what everyone should see when they log into Splunk. This is the home page. Hopefully everyone so far has been using this app. This is search and reporting app. This is what we call core Splunk. This is the base Splunk capability. The next one below it, we have enterprise security. While this loads up, there we go. So this is the home page of enterprise security, and it kind of lists the individual dashboards and drop downs in a row here. So we'll just dig into the first one. Let's look at the overall security posture of what we have in our data generated environment today. This is actually what I like to call the home screen of enterprise security. The other one there, I just kind of call the middleman, but this is my this is what I call my home page. And the first thing that you'll see here up on the top is what enterprise security and Splunk call your notable events that you have picked. Now, I'll go into it in a second, but these notable events are the result of picked correlation searches that you want to see on your home page. Now, I should stress that these notable events don't necessarily mean that they are a security threat or something that should be investigated, just that they are notables and probably should be looked into. The point is, there's probably not 2,000 critical threats going on right now. These are just notable events based off of triggered correlation searches. Now, this is obviously editable. You can edit it and pick and choose what notable events you want to see on the front. Like I said, these are the results of correlation searches. When you open this up, you get to pick your correlation searches that you want to see on your home page. Again, I'm going to go into what these correlation searches are, but nonetheless, your home page lets you pick the notable events you want the immediate view into. So what you'll see is we have a change here. You'll see we either have an up or a down. I haven't had this server running long enough for us to see a 24-hour change. What these arrows over here on the right of all these numbers of notables indicate is the change over 24 hours. I turned the server on at about 6:45 Mountain Time last night, so we're not at a 24-hour change just yet. But over time, you would see these numbers change either up or down over the 24-hour rolling window. So if there are any of you that are actually going to be working on the server tonight, you'll see that these actually change. These these numbers will change. So just moving right along, scrolling down, you will see this next one, which has the notable events by urgency. So this dashboard takes these notable events, aggregates them, and then adds a criticality to them based off of just what core enterprise security calls critical down through informational. And I'll show you in a minute, but what you can do is you can drill into these and actually see the raw events that will do that. The next one over here is you'll see your notable events over time. Obviously, this was quite a spike when I turned on the server. That is Eastern time. But nonetheless, you see as the data generates, we start to see more and more and less and less. And then these are what do I want to call it? These are the results of, over here on the left, the top notable events. These are correlation searches themselves with spark lines. So we'll see the top notable events based off of correlation searches and how they run over time. And then again, over on the right is the top IP addresses that have triggered top notable events. So I've mentioned a few times the word correlation search. I'm going to go and show you what those are right now. They exist over here under configure. And then, oh boy, incident management, I believe. Yeah, okay. Sorry, I just had to remember where they exist. And then you'll click into correlation searches once it loads up. Now, enterprise security comes with 43, as you can see, 43 correlation searches that have been built based off of industry best practices and what we're seeing as far as, you know, what we're seeing in security posture throughout the day. So as enterprise security gets updated, you might see new correlation searches built in to enterprise security. Nice thing you see right here, you can create your own. But I'm going to go ahead and dig into one of these and just show you what comprises a correlation search. All right, even though this is pretty robust, everyone should see that this is just a base core Splunk search. This is something that you can add into the search field on just core Splunk itself, and this is what is considered a correlation search. So this kind of adds into what I was saying previously in the last demo. Core Splunk is a very powerful tool as far as using your security workbench. This is just a basic function of core Splunk itself. Obviously, there's a lot of different added attributes to this that you can change. The point is, if you dedicate the time into your environment, you could actually create enterprise security yourself in the correlation searches you want to see. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of man hours that have been devoted into adding this correlation search into the notable event dashboard, adding criticality to it, but the point is, everything is based off of a core Splunk search itself. I'll go back. And like I said, you can create your own. Say these 43 aren't showing you everything you need. You just want to make something up yourself. And you just add the search into there and apply different pieces to this. You add the time range. If you wanted time range, you could add the cron. You could add all of these fields to it. But the point is, these are just different pieces of the base core Splunk searching functionality that are included in this. So when you create a correlation search, it's really just performing functions on top of core Splunk. I do not want to save that. But what I do want to do, like I said, I want to drill into what the notable events look like. So I'm going to go back to the security posture screen. And just going to reiterate once again, on this notable event bar, these are results of those 43 correlation searches. Right now, I only have 6 picked. Like I said, you can change them to whatever you want. Here are those 43 correlation searches. One thing I didn't mention is you can activate or deactivate any correlation search that you actually have configured. These do run, when they're active, they do run in real time. Most of them do anyway. Some of them are set on scheduled searches, but this is why both us and Splunk recommend a pretty good sized search head when you're using enterprise security, 16 core minimum, just to handle the real-time searches that are already being performed out of the base Splunk Enterprise for Security app install. All right, moving right along. So back down to the notable events by urgency, what I want to do is drill in. We can drill into what has been, considered a critical urgency. And we'll just go ahead and bring up the next page. And what this actually does is this dove us into the incident review. We could have just gone to incident review from the home page itself, but what that security posture drill-in did is it actually filled in these pieces for us, filled in these fields. And you'll see that we have these critical correlation searches that have been triggered. I'm going to finalize this to show you that this actually pops out quite a bit of data, quite a bit of information that you can see based on the event. So if you want to see exactly what correlation search triggered this, you simply select the event and view the details. And you'll see all of the fields that were triggered based on the event, as well as the correlation search, the actual named correlation search that triggered the event. If you click on this, it will drill into that one page I was showing you where we configure the correlation searches themselves. But nonetheless, you can see all of the information that triggered this event itself. The next part about this that I quite like, is I almost consider this next part turning enterprise security into a ticketing system. So under each event, you can edit it, and you can change the status of everything or assign it. So if something gets triggered, you want to assign it to somebody for resolution, give it to them. Give it to one of the users of Splunk. These are our administrator users that we have right now. So let's say if I want to give it to me, it is a critical urgency right now. I know it is. And then status is it's new. And you add a comment to it, and you change the actual the metadata that are assigned to this correlation search that's been triggered. Now, what it does is when you update this, when you assign a new owner to it, they're actually going to get alerted that they've been assigned something new. And what they'll do is they go through resolution, they can change it as in progress, pending resolved, or closed, or if they decide this is not critical, this is just an informational medium, whatever you want to call it, criticality, they can change it, and it will not show up as a critical event anymore under the notable events. So if you change the urgency of this guy, like I'm saying, under the events, this high volume traffic from blah, blah, blah to blah, blah, blah will never show up again as a critical urgency. So it's a powerful tool. You need to be careful with that one, changing the urgency, obviously. But the point that I'm trying to make there is that I almost think of this as the ticketing system. When we see something critical come through, you assign it to somebody for resolution, then it goes through the wings. Point is, again, this is pretty powerful. This is just base enterprise security. Now, I'm going to go to the next part, which actually shows us as event investigators. You can actually do that from right here, but I'm going to go ahead and do it through, actually, let's do it both ways. So from the details themselves, we can actually investigate this asset itself. So we can take this into the asset investigator, which, as you'll see right here, is another pane right here. But if I go and do the asset investigator from this event itself, it'll fill in the information for me. Very powerful. Okay. While this loads up, so this is, like I said, this is the asset investigator page. Now, if I had just gone into Asset Investigator, it would have left everything blank. This IP address would not have been filled. Obviously, it's pretty easy to fill in that IP, but it's easier, in my opinion, to go from Incident Review and view that asset from that page itself. And what this is going to give you is, where did it come from? What is the priority of it? It's going to give you it. So this isn't actually returning anything because I haven't had the server run long enough. It needs to run for at least 24 hours for quite a few things to show up. The only notable event it had was at this time. But the point is, out of the box, you get these 6 event types that have been popped up. You saw when we did the last demo, IDS attack was an event type. Threat list is another one. There's configuration changes, authentications. It hasn't had the chance and time to run through it, but nonetheless, let's go ahead and look at the notable events. From any of these, you can click in, and on the right, it'll populate that event that popped up as part of this. So we can investigate another asset if we wanted to. The point is you can run your asset investigation from your incident review and actually view into what, say, this asset is doing over time. The next one I want to do is Identity Investigator. Say we want to actually run a search on, investigate a host itself. Let me think. I think we so appropriately named a bad identity as Haxor. Now let's just make sure. Sure enough. So what this does is it pulls out any host or DNS entry or something that has the term Haxor in it. As you can see here, it has triggered on the user field of Haxor. It has also been triggered under this email address as well as this user ID. So, like you saw in the Asset Investigator, you get these notable event types that you can drill into. And this down here, this time picker, shows you the event or the activity over time. Obviously, we're sitting here under a data generator as we have pretty predictive predictive results, but you can drill down this time frame to a very specific time, and it'll reload the event types, in which case you can drill down even further if you need to. Point is, very powerful indeed. So from there, I want to go into predictive analytics. What predictive analytics does is it applies very powerful statistical and linear regression analytics to what your data is showing over time. This isn't going to be very helpful right now because I only have about a 20-hour window of time that it's been running against. But the point is, it's going to show you the norm of your data based off of what you picked. While it populates here, let's go ahead, let's do network traffic in general, the big data model. Let's do the DNS traffic. I want any attribute here? Nah, let's just do it over the 24 hours and let's submit it. Let's go ahead and check the predictive analytics of what we're seeing of DNS traffic over a 24-hour period. And again, this isn't going to give us a whole lot of information right now because we only have about an 18 to 20-hour window of what it's looking at. But what it's going to do is it's going to show the upper echelons, the lower echelons over time, and run predictive analytics of what it thinks it should be running. That would be the blue line, or sorry, the yellow line, and then the blue line is the actuals. So far, everything's been looking pretty normal as far as what we're expecting for DNS traffic. There have been a few spikes. There's a down spike right there. That's that data gen, what's actually happened. A down spike maybe not overly critical as far as DNS traffic is concerned, but if you see something way up here and the predictive analytics are showing it to be way down here, probably something to investigate. The point is, this is giving you statistical models that you can use against the norm of your data. Over time, as this runs, this is a very powerful tool. If you see something going over the norm as far as, say, 4 standard deviations away from something or bigger, actually even 2, probably something to investigate in if it's not expected. I should say expected because sometimes it might be expected. I'll use the example. At GTRI, we actually did an MPLS cutover to a new data center pretty recently, and our domain controllers and DNS servers just went absolutely berserk. So the amount of security relevant data to the Windows servers just skyrocketed, and using our enterprise security deployment, we looked at that. We saw this DNS traffic just go through the roof, and we were able to attribute it to that. It was just the firewalls on the domain controllers kind of going berserk. Nonetheless, this is a very powerful tool. This is a great dashboard to have up if you're actually if you're running a SOC, you can change this to over time. You can make this a real-time search, and this will be updated in real time. The count line would be updated in real time, and if you see a spike, time to look in. All right, I think that's enough of the regression and analytics for you guys. Let's see, what else can I show you in the time we've got? I've got a few minutes here. Let's go ahead and look at the advanced threat list here. And just like the last dashboard we were looking at, we can fill in different data models. We can fill in specific assets or specific IP addresses and apply it to a specific threat list. One thing I should say about threat lists is this is something, if the built-in threat lists are not what you need for enterprise security to run in your environment, they do need to be uploaded. And that is something that does take time. That asset list, host list, identity list, and threat lists are what actually need to be built and uploaded into enterprise security so that it actually knows what it's measuring things against. And those are in simple CSV file formats. We just need to work hand in hand to actually develop the threat list. So these that you see here are actually built in. These are based off of industry standard best practices and are applied to, the firewalls, proxy servers, everything like that. But if there is some form of a threat that you need to be looking at that does not fit into the built-in threat list, it does need to be added. Just a caveat to that. I was just adding that in. But you are able to, so this right now is pulling up the threat lists of everything, all data models, all threat lists, all identities over the last 24 hours. As you can see, once again, this is pretty obvious that we're running data gens, but nonetheless, this can be run in real time as well to see, if there's a pretty good spike against the data model and threat list that you want to be made aware of, have this up on your screen, and if you see a spike, time to look. Nonetheless, something else very powerful. Oh, let's see. I'll give you guys one more example here. Under security domains, let's go into the access center in general. So what this is going to show us is who is accessing the network from when and why, and left and right there. But again, this is showing you, this is a lot like that security posture page right at the beginning, but with notable events shown specific to authentication. You could have these notable events run on the front page. This one is specific to just those notable events. But what this page has given us, this is, by the way, again, everything as far as access goes with all data models, all business units, all categories. What this is showing us is just access over time. Now, as you can see, that's a lot of failed attempts over time, going up and up and up. Again, probably time to look into maybe that that search that I showed you guys back in the last demo. Probably time to go ahead and look as to where those failed password attempts are coming from, and probably block some IPs on the firewalls. Nonetheless, this gives you a nice view into the access of your network. Is this authorized access? Where is it coming from? What IPs are the accesses coming from? What this is showing, if we actually ran an action and gave it a failure, what these guys would show is failed actions by IP addresses. Nonetheless, another just great part of enterprise security that's built into the application. I don't want to go into too much further. Again, we can sit here, I can talk to this app for hours and hours. The point is, this is the base enterprise security deployment. This is what it looks like, and this is what you get out of it. Very powerful, holistic views into your network to actually, enable your security operations center, become very proactive as to the whole security posture of your company. Another caveat to add on to that is, once again, this is just based off of core Splunk. Yes, this is incredibly powerful, and hundreds, if not thousands, no, definitely thousands of Splunk's man hours have gone into developing these dashboards and these correlation searches. Because those correlations, just because those correlation searches are core Splunk searches, doesn't mean they're simple. As you saw, they can be pretty robust. I mean, those searches, even though they are core Splunk, they have been built to win. I mean, they're built to show you exactly what you need to do. It's taken time to build these things. Not just the searches themselves, but the capabilities of these dashboards, the navigation of this app, everything. Thousands of man hours gone into basically turning this enterprise event logger and operation intelligence platform into what you saw as a industry recognized and one of the best SIM solutions out there. So I think I'm going to quit yammering for you guys here. I just was chatting for quite a while. But nonetheless, I'm going to go ahead and actually turn you guys loose to the last lab. Before I do that, just going to, say pretty much just thank you. Thank you for joining us today. I really do hope you guys got a little bit more out of Splunk, maybe that you were looking to get as to why we use Splunk for security, how we can use core Splunk, and how we can use the enterprise security application. I do hope the labs have been very helpful for you guys today, and actually interesting, especially. I'm really hoping this next one for you guys is incredibly useful, so you can get some hands-on interaction with the enterprise security application itself. Again, on behalf of myself and Chris, thank you for joining us. I know I'm kind of ending abruptly here, but I want to make sure you guys have enough time to go ahead and play around with this in the 2-hour allotment that we've got going on. As with the last few labs, absolutely ask questions. I'm going to go ahead and keep the WebEx up here for, I'll keep it open till about 5 after the hour, so that if you have questions during your lab or you want to ask it through WebEx, you absolutely can. We're going to go ahead and stay here muted so that we can answer those questions for you. But if you have questions after the lab, there is my email and there is Chris's email, twilliams@gtri.com and cgreenwood@gtri.com. If you have questions at all as to what what we need to do for the lab, what JTRI can do, maybe what we need to do to implement enterprise security, any question, feel free to ask us at any time. But without further ado, I'm going to turn you guys loose for this last lab. Hopefully you enjoy it. And again, if you can't get to it in the next 10 minutes, you absolutely can through the night. Thank you guys again for joining today. Hope you learned something valuable. Have a great rest of your day.